Welcome back to our channel. Coins that are worth more than you think, explore now. It was the year 1964. A time of great change and promise in America. The nation was in the midst of the civil rights movement, President Lyndon B. Johnson was ushering in the Great Society programs, and on the global stage, the Cold War raged on. But in the world of coinage, something subtle but significant was unfolding, a coin that, though small in size, would later become a giant in the world of numismatics. This is the story of the 1964 1-cent penny, a coin that may seem common at first glance but is anything but ordinary. At first glance, a penny seems almost insignificant, right? It's the smallest denomination in U.S. currency and one that many of us toss aside without a second thought. But not every penny is created equal. There are certain coins that rise above the ordinary, capturing the interest of collectors, investors, and historians alike. And the 1964 penny is one of those rare exceptions. Before we dive into the coin's remarkable journey, let's take a moment to appreciate the era it came from. The United States in 1964 was a nation experiencing rapid change, culturally, politically, and economically. The penny, like many other coins in circulation, had undergone some significant transformations throughout the decades. And the design of the 1964 penny was no exception. The United States Mint, the government agency responsible for producing coins, had been continuously refining its coinage to better reflect the changing times. By 1964, the familiar Lincoln cent design had been in circulation for over 50 years, with Abraham Lincoln's likeness gracing the obverse, or front, of the coin. On the reverse, the iconic shield and wheat ears design had also been in place for several decades, but in 1959, the Mint had made a significant change to the reverse of the penny. They replaced the wheat stalks with the now iconic Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. The new reverse design was part of a broader effort to make American coinage more modern and reflective of the country's evolving identity. The 1964 penny, with its clean lines and familiar design, was an emblem of a nation on the cusp of change. Now, the 1964 penny wasn't necessarily rare when it was first minted. In fact, it was produced in massive quantities. In 1964 alone, over 1 billion pennies were struck by the U.S. Mint. So, why is it such a big deal today? Why does a coin that was once seen as so commonplace hold such incredible appeal among collectors? The answer lies in the specifics, the details that set this coin apart from the millions of others minted in the same year. You see, in 1964, the U.S. Mint was still using a traditional copper composition for pennies. But by the mid-1960s, the United States was facing a growing shortage of copper. The demand for copper had surged due to its use in various industries, from electrical wiring to construction materials, and the Mint found itself in a bit of a bind. This led to a decision that would have profound effects on U.S. coinage: the change in the metal composition of the penny. Starting in 1965, the penny would be made primarily of a copper-plated zinc composition, replacing the earlier, pure copper coins. This shift was driven by rising costs and scarcity of copper, and it marked the beginning of the end for the copper-heavy pennies we all know and sometimes collect today. In fact, after 1964, the U.S. Mint would never produce another penny with such a high copper content. But here's where things get interesting. While most pennies minted in 1964 were made with the standard copper composition, there was a small batch of pennies that was accidentally struck with silver blanks. These rare, silver, pennies are what numismatists and collectors covet today. The coin we're talking about, the 1964 penny, was produced during a brief period of transition. Some of the blanks that were supposed to be used for other denominations, including the dime and quarter, were accidentally mixed in with the blanks for the penny. These silver blanks, although not intended for the penny, were struck with the familiar design of Lincoln's profile and the Lincoln Memorial. The result was a coin unlike any other, a penny that, for all intents and purposes, was made of silver instead of copper. This mistake is what makes the 1964 penny so valuable. To the untrained eye, it might look just like any other penny, but for the sharp-eyed collector, the difference is clear. A silver penny is a rare and valuable find, a true treasure in the world of numismatics. But here's the kicker: these coins were never meant to be circulated. They were, after all, a mistake. And so, they didn't make it into general circulation in any meaningful way. Most of the silver pennies that were struck were quickly removed from the public's hands and melted down to avoid confusion. But a few slipped through the cracks, making their way into the hands of collectors and savvy numismatists who recognized their unique value. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin that was accidentally made of silver become a prized collector's item? Well, as with all rare coins, the value lies not just in the metal but in the history, the story, and the rarity of the item. The 1964 silver penny is a symbol of that moment in history when a small mistake became a monumental discovery, and here's where things really get exciting. Since the discovery of these silver pennies, they've become some of the most sought-after coins in the world. Their rarity, historical significance, and the sheer oddity of their existence have caused their value to skyrocket. Collectors are willing to pay top dollar for a 1964 silver penny, and while many have been sold at auction over the years, one particular coin stands out as the most extraordinary. This penny, this tiny, silver coin that was once just an accident, is now valued at a staggering amount. As the years go by, the value of these silver pennies only continues to rise. What was once a simple, overlooked penny from 1964 is now worth an incredible amount of money. In fact, some of the finest examples of this coin have sold for as much as $168,000 at auction. That's right, $168,000 for a penny that was never meant to exist in the first place. So, why is the 1964 silver penny worth so much? The answer lies in its rarity, its story, and its place in the history of U.S. coinage. It's a reminder of how a small mistake can have big consequences, and how a little piece of history can hold immense value over time. Now, the next time you find yourself looking at a penny, remember that not all pennies are created equal. Some are just a little bit more special, a little bit rarer, and a whole lot more valuable. And the 1964 silver penny is the perfect example of this. From its humble beginnings in 1964 to its status as one of the most coveted coins in numismatics today, this penny has a story worth telling, and its value, both in history and money, continues to grow. So, if you happen to come across a 1964 penny, take a moment to inspect it closely. It could just be the rare find of a lifetime. It was 1984, and the United States was living through a time of political stability and economic growth. Ronald Reagan was re-elected for a second term as president, the Cold War tensions were beginning to thaw, and American pop culture was in full swing, from the rise of blockbuster movies to the explosion of music genres that would define the 80s. The world was changing rapidly, but amidst all these historic shifts, something relatively small and often overlooked was quietly circulating through pockets and change jars across the nation. It was the 1984 1-cent penny. Now, the penny, often dismissed as little more than loose change, has a history much deeper than most people realize. It's a coin with a legacy, a story, and in the case of the 1984 penny, a future that would be far more remarkable than anyone could have guessed when it first rolled off the minting presses. To understand the significance of the 1984 penny, let's step back for a moment and take a look at the backdrop of its creation. The year 1984 was a time when inflation was stable, the U.S. economy was booming, and the penny was still one of the most commonly used coins in circulation. The United States Mint was continuing its regular production of the 1-cent piece, which had been in circulation in various forms since the late 19th century. By the time 1984 rolled around, the penny had undergone several changes in design and composition, but it was still easily recognizable by its most famous feature, Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, or front, of the coin. The design of the penny had seen numerous changes since its inception, with multiple reverses and several different portraits of Lincoln, but in 1959, a significant redesign had occurred. The traditional wheat stalks on the reverse were replaced with the Lincoln Memorial, an iconic structure that was not only symbolic of Lincoln's legacy but also a lasting tribute to the history of the nation. This reverse design would remain in place for decades, including for the 1984 penny, but beyond its familiar design, the 1984 penny holds particular significance because it came from a time when the United States Mint was facing increasing concerns about the cost of producing coins. In the 1980s, the cost of materials used to produce copper, the primary metal in pennies at the time, was rising. The penny had always been made primarily from copper, but by 1982, the price of copper had become so high that the mint was forced to start considering alternative compositions. As a result, the 1984 penny was still made primarily of copper but included a small amount of zinc, which would soon become a larger part of the penny's composition in later years. However, it wasn't just the composition of the penny that was drawing attention. In the world of coin collecting, something interesting was happening with the 1984 penny. A small, seemingly insignificant error was about to capture the attention of collectors and numismatists alike. Now, when we talk about errors in coinage, we aren't just referring to a poorly struck coin or a slight imperfection. No, in the world of numismatics, even the smallest mistake can sometimes be the key to unlocking massive value. The error we're talking about with the 1984 penny is known as the double die variety. What does that mean exactly? Well, a double die error occurs when the design of a coin is stamped twice during the minting process, leading to a doubling effect in the lettering, date, and sometimes even the portrait. In the case of the 1984 penny, some of these coins exhibited a noticeable doubling in the date, making the 1984 appear distorted and uneven. It wasn't a widespread issue, but the few 1984 pennies that were struck with this error became highly sought after by collectors. In fact, this error would come to define the 1984 penny for many collectors in the years that followed. But why does a double die error make the 1984 penny so valuable? The answer lies in rarity and the nature of the mistake. Errors like this are not intentional, and they are not common. When a coin is struck with a double die, it's the result of a slight misalignment or mechanical issue at the mint, and because most coins are caught during the quality control process, they are quickly discarded. The coins that slip through the cracks, however, are the ones that make their way into the hands of collectors, and they are incredibly valuable due to their rarity. So, how do you spot a 1984 double die penny? Well, you'll need a keen eye for detail and a magnifying glass, but the key feature to look for is in the date. If you closely inspect the 1984 on the obverse of the coin, you'll see that the numbers appear to be slightly shifted, with a faint secondary outline visible next to the main date. This distinctive feature makes the 1984 double die penny stand out from other pennies of the same year and is what collectors are always on the lookout for. It's a simple mistake, but one that has turned this particular penny into a coveted treasure. Because of the rarity of this double die error, these pennies have become some of the most sought-after coins in the world of numismatics. In fact, the 1984 double die penny is considered by many to be one of the most important and valuable error coins of the 1980s. But how valuable are they, exactly? That's where things get truly fascinating. Over the years, the 1984 double die penny has sold for extraordinary amounts, thanks to its rarity and appeal to collectors. Some examples of the coin, especially those in pristine condition, have fetched prices that will make your jaw drop. In fact, a 1984 double die penny in exceptional condition, graded by professional numismatic organizations, has been known to sell for a mind-blowing amount of money, $146,000. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny, struck in 1984, with a simple, unintentional error, is now worth over $146,000. But why does it fetch such a hefty price? The answer is simple: rarity, demand, and the appeal of error coins. Coin collectors and investors alike are willing to pay top dollar for these kinds of mistakes because they are so rare and hold such significant historical and numismatic value. Every time one of these coins is sold, it becomes another chapter in the ever-growing story of the 1984 double die penny. It's a fascinating example of how something as small and seemingly insignificant as a penny can hold such incredible value. What was once a simple coin circulating alongside millions of others is now a piece of American history, sought after by collectors and valued at an extraordinary price. So, the next time you come across a 1984 penny, don't just toss it aside. Take a moment to inspect it closely. You could be holding a piece of history in your hand, one that's worth far more than its original face value. After all, a small mistake in minting might just be your ticket to a fortune. It was the year 2005, and the world was already well into the 21st century, with many new changes shaping the landscape. The United States was facing new challenges and changes, and in the world of coinage, the U.S. Mint was also preparing for a new chapter. Little did people know that the 2005 penny, which many might have simply tossed aside or spent without a second thought, would soon become a highly sought-after coin in the world of numismatics. But let's rewind a bit and understand the context of 2005. By the time this penny was minted, the United States was in the midst of the early 2000s economic boom. The country had just survived the challenging aftermath of the September 11th attacks and was on the rise again, both economically and socially. Meanwhile, American coinage was steadily continuing its legacy, maintaining designs that had been in place for decades, yet subtly evolving with the times. The penny itself, although one of the least valued coins in circulation, had played a significant role in American history for over a century. The designs of pennies had evolved, but one figure had remained a permanent fixture: the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln. This design, featuring Lincoln's bust on the obverse, had first appeared in 1909. By 2005, it had become a symbol of the United States itself. However, something different was on the horizon for the penny in 2005. That year marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and the U.S. Mint decided to commemorate this milestone by issuing a new series of penny designs. This was a special moment in American numismatic history, as the Mint had not issued multiple designs for the penny since 1909 when the Lincoln cent was first introduced. What makes the 2005 penny so unique is that it was part of a historic series that would feature 4 different designs to celebrate Lincoln's life and legacy. These designs were specifically created to highlight different phases of Lincoln's life, and they would be issued on the reverse of the penny. This was an extraordinary moment because it marked the first time in more than 95 years that the reverse of the penny had been redesigned. The first design in the series, which appeared in 2005, was called The Birthplace. It featured a depiction of the log cabin where Lincoln was born in 1809 in a humble log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. This was an incredibly symbolic image. The cabin not only represented Lincoln's modest beginnings but also reflected the perseverance and determination that would define his life and presidency. This design aimed to remind the American public of the humble roots from which one of the country's greatest presidents emerged. Now, as remarkable as this redesign was, what really captured the attention of collectors and investors was not just the change in design, but a subtle issue in the production process. As with many great stories in numismatics, sometimes it's not the intended features of a coin that make it valuable, it's the mistakes or oddities that occurred during the minting process. And that brings us to the 2005 penny, which, unbeknownst to many, had some rather rare and valuable anomalies hidden within it. In 2005, a small but notable error occurred in the minting process: a double die variety on certain pennies. This type of error happens when a coin's design is unintentionally struck more than once, causing a noticeable doubling effect in the image. In the case of the 2005 penny, this double die error appeared primarily in the 2005 date and the word Liberty on the obverse of the coin. The doubling effect was subtle but visible upon close inspection. This minor error, often overlooked by the casual observer, would become a key to unlocking the value of the 2005 penny. But why is this doubling so important? The rarity of such a mistake, along with its distinctiveness, makes the 2005 doubled die penny highly sought after by collectors. Coins with double dies are rarities in the world of numismatics, and even small errors such as this one can significantly increase a coin's value. What might seem like a simple imperfection to most could actually be a rare opportunity for collectors. Over the years, collectors and investors began to take notice of these 2005 pennies, especially those with the double die error. What had once been an ordinary penny circulating in people's pockets was now something that collectors actively sought. The hunt for these unique 2005 pennies began, with more and more people scouring their change, inspecting each penny to see if it might be one of the rare, double die varieties. In the world of numismatics, every small detail counts, and this particular error made the 2005 penny stand out. Now, you might be wondering, how much is a 2005 penny with the double die error worth? To understand this, it's important to realize that value in numismatics is determined by factors such as rarity, demand, and condition. Because of the doubling effect and the limited number of these coins that were struck, the 2005 penny with the double die error became one of the most prized finds in the coin collecting community. The most well-known 2005 double die pennies have sold for incredible amounts at auctions and through private sales. While the average 2005 penny without the error still holds only its nominal face value of 1 cent, those rare specimens with the double die error can fetch prices far beyond anything most people would expect. As the demand for these rare coins grew, so did their value. And in certain cases, the price tag attached to a 2005 double die penny reached a truly impressive figure. As of today, a 2005 penny with the double die error, in excellent condition, can be worth as much as $132,000. That's right, a single penny, a coin that most people wouldn't think twice about, has now become a true collector's gem, fetching a value that many people would never have imagined when they first saw it. And this value continues to rise as more collectors hunt for these rare coins and as fewer of them remain in circulation. So, how did this humble penny go from being just another piece of change to one of the most sought-after coins of the 21st century? It all comes down to a unique design, a small error in the minting process, and the lasting legacy of Abraham Lincoln. The 2005 penny represents not just a piece of history, but a reminder of how the smallest of details can make a coin invaluable. Now, the next time you find yourself holding a 2005 penny, take a moment to inspect it closely. What might seem like a simple coin could, in fact, be a rare treasure. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just someone with a keen eye for detail, always remember, in the world of coins, even the smallest mistakes can lead to big rewards. And for the 2005 penny, those mistakes have made it one of the most valuable pennies in existence today. So, remember this the next time you find a 2005 penny in your pocket or jar. You never know, it could be worth far more than you think.